Hey guys, it's Monica at Academic Phoenix Plus, and welcome to my first Substance tutorial. This is going to be about the introduction to Substance Painter. And right now you can see that we are in Maya because what I'm going to be showing you guys is how to import this object into Substance and then explore Substance. I just wanted to show you the whole process. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is a shader ball. You guys can download it on my website at academicphoenixplus.com for free. So feel free to download it and follow along. And what we're going to be doing is we are going to take this, export it out of Maya, and bring it into Substance. So before we do that though, we need to make sure that our object is UV mapped. So as you can see, it is. So just double check to make sure that your UVs are laid out correctly. As you can see, as I select my whole object here, let me select it all. There you go. Everything's laid out and it's placed in the 0 to 1 space. So the next thing we need to do is export this. So right now it's in a group in my outliner, and I can go to File, Export Selection, and let's go to the options. I'm going to reset my settings just to make sure it looks just like yours. And right here, it's going to export it as a Maya file. We really don't want that. We want is an OBJ. You can also export it as an FBX. So right here is OBJ. If you do not see that option, you just need to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and then go into Plugin Manager. And if you type up here, OBJ, there it is, OBJ export. Same thing with FBX, by the way, FBX. There it is, FBX, perfect. It's really up to you. Sometimes I just turn all of these off. You don't have to. Sometimes I want to export an OBJ with no materials or anything because there's something seriously wrong with the files. So sometimes I just turn these off. But in this point, you don't have to. I've already exported an OBJ earlier, but you can go ahead and call it anything you want. Please note that it does place it into your scenes if you set your project correctly. So I'm going to be able to find my OBJ in my scenes. So I'm going to just go ahead and replace this one. Export selection. Are you sure? Yes. And then let's hop into Substance. All right, I am using Substance 2020, and the first one that's going to pop up is this guy right here, the splash page. I would recommend that you explore this. It's got tutorials. It's got a lot of really great things, so you might want to think about going ahead and exploring, but let's just close that for now. All right, so up here at the top right, we have our windows. This is our 3D, 2D, which is F1. You can also go to F2, which is just 3D only, and then F3, which is 2D. So this is where I'm at right now, is the 3D, 2D, F1. So over here at the top, we have our typical menu, File, Edit. Over here on the left, we have Tools. Over here, we have a ton of stuff to explore, which includes materials, brushes, all sorts of great stuff that we're going to cover. Over here to the right, we have our texture set list, we have layers, we have texture set settings, and up here we have display settings and all sorts of really cool stuff. I'm going to collapse that. And over here we have our properties, which we're going to be using a lot. All right, let's bring in our model. Let's go to File, New. And there's a list of things you guys can choose from. We have a tendency to just use the metallic roughness one. PBR. So go ahead and bring that in if you want to. I'm going to increase my documentation resolution to 2K because I can always res down. Now my object isn't very large. If you're going to do like a full-blown character, you might want to go 4K, but my object's pretty small, so it's a ball. So we'll just stick to 2K. Let's go ahead and click on select and find our ball. Shader ball. Here it is, our OBJ. And everything else looks good. We'll leave it at default and then click OK. Ta-da! All right, so here is our shader ball. Now this uses the same Maya rotations. When you first start Substance Painter, it will ask you what type of clicking do you want, and I chose Maya because I'm so used to it. So it's up to you what you want to choose, but I probably would recommend Maya. And I'm going to be saying Maya things like Alt middle mouse is pan. So make sure you're using the Maya settings. Over here to the right, we have our UVs all laid out. There is already a shader apply that's actually just the lighting system on it and just showing you what it's going to look like. Up here at the top, we have a couple of choices. We have base color, which is nothing. We don't have a color. We have height. So there's a couple of things we can choose here. If you click on the letter C on your keyboard, you can actually scroll through these. But I'm just going to choose material. Over here to the right, we have our texture settings. And we have our layers. Notice that we're in layer 1. And over here to the right, we have our texture settings, and now there's information to play around with. Usually when you import your object, the first thing you want to do is go to your texture set settings and bake the mesh maps. This is what makes Substance so powerful, is that you can actually bake things automatically, and then it drives the textures that Substance has. So let's go to our texture set settings. Let's go to Bake Mesh Maps. And over here to the left, we have a bunch of things that you can choose from. Now I'm going to remove one. It's called the ID map. We don't really have an ID map, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And if you click on World Space Normals, you'll see there's no parameters. Ambient occlusion, I'm going to go ahead and say ignore backface to always. I'm not really interested in it trying to figure out some backfaces, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to common. Now the output size, as you notice, is 512. That's really small. So what we want to do is go ahead and change it to 2048. I can always change it later, but I might as well start off strong. Again, you can always go up even higher. Look at that, an 8K map. That's pretty powerful. All right, whoops, let me double check to make sure. Everything looks good. And then we're gonna go ahead and click on Bake Maps. It's gonna do some magic over here. Magical stuff. It's doing occlusion, as you can see, really cool. It's doing a curvature map and using normal space, and you can see the thickness and everything, and wow. All sorts of cool stuff has happened. So what does all that mean? Well, we now have a lot of shaders that are going to be driven by these things. So notice that now under Bake Maps, we now have normal. And if you just kind of hover, you'll see the whole name there. Let's go back to our layers and let's go ahead and start painting. So over here to the right, we have layer 1. So this is very similar to Photoshop because it works in layers. So over here to the bottom, we have some paint properties, and I might actually bring this up a little bit so we can see more. So if I hover, you'll notice that I can actually go in and just start painting. And it's a typical Photoshop brush, right? It's soft, it's pressure sensitive. And over here, we can work on the size if you want to. So if you want a big brush, you can just go ahead and make it big. We can decrease the flow. We can do opacity. So opacity is always nice because then you get to like layer things together. So this is basically how you can start painting stylized things. I'm going to make sure I bring that back up. All of those options, by the way, are driven up here. If we keep scrolling down, we get to jitter, all the Photoshop stuff that we have. And then you're going to hit alpha. Our alpha is actually the shape that we're using. So let's say if we want to use this one. So I'm going to rotate this and start kind of painting. So you can see that I can start painting these lines. I can also just stamp. And if you want to actually paint it, of course, you're more than welcome to increase the spacing. So then you can just kind of stamp. There, as you can see, we have a lot of alphas to choose from. So you can choose this one, which will give it a little bit of that color. You can paint on the UVs if you want to. So that's what makes it really cool. You can do all sorts of stuff. All right, let's talk about a very important aspect of it, which is this part right here, the material. Bink. Notice that it has color, height, rough, metal, and normal. These are all very important because we're telling Substance is that, hey, I'm going to be adding all of this when I start painting. So for example, if I want to go ahead and in this layer, if I want to increase the height when I start painting, I can. So now I've got some really interesting roughness there. Let me pick another brush just so I can demonstrate a little bit better what that looks like. Let's go back to this, an arrow. Bonk. So it sticks out. Very cool. If I go over to the opposite side, under height, I can dig it in. So that's the way you can control it. Okay, so let's pick a different alpha. And let's go ahead and I'm going to increase the spacing a little bit. So we already have the height. Let's go ahead and decrease the roughness. So you'll notice that when I start to, let me rotate this a little bit and get a different spot, you can see that I can get a little bit of that nice highlight now in comparison to the one that was kind of bland. And actually, let me grab one of these brushes. So over here, we have brushes selected, and I can actually grab a couple of nice ones. And you can see that I can do that. Let me go ahead and change this to 0, the height. 0, so we can see the demonstration a little bit better. And what I'm going to do is just kind of paint this area right here. So you can see the nice reflections that Substance provides. But what's really neat is that I can go ahead and increase the metallic here and start painting, and now I'm getting more metallic. So this is why Substance is so powerful, is that it's got you can actually visually paint the specularity, you can do the color, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can also choose different types of brushes to give you different types of textures. It's a lot of fun. So let's choose something like red, for example. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint away a little bit. So I would highly recommend that you explore this a little bit. So I'm going to make this a little rougher, metallic, but still a little rough, so you can kind of see the difference. Whoops. By the way, if you rotate this, I have yet to see how you can snap it back into place, so just do your best if you accidentally rotate your UVs. All right, so now that we've played around with some brushes and things like that, let's keep exploring this a little bit more. So up here at the top, we have a couple of options. One is an empty layer where you can paint. Another one is a fill layer. So I'm going to click on this little guy right here, and it's going to create a fill layer. The fill layer, as you'll notice, makes everything, well, gray, but it does keep some of that texture information from below. Now, just like like any other layer, it's got a base color. So let's go ahead and choose something fun. We are working with color, height, roughness, middle, and normal, so keep that in mind. If this is something you're not interested in, then you can just go ahead and turn off, let's say, height and normal. We just want a color. You'll notice that we only have these three options, which kind of keeps everything a little bit under control. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit shinier and maybe slightly metallic, just so I can see the difference. The next thing I'm going to do is create another fill layer just to demonstrate the effect. I'm going to choose a different color this time. I'm going to choose maybe, let's go for purple. Why not? And same thing with this one. I'm going to turn off height and normal, and then maybe make this one a little rougher and not metallic. Notice that it's very similar to Photoshop. It works in layers from top to bottom. So anything at the top covers the layer below. And just like Photoshop, there's actually something called masks. So let's go ahead and we can right click and choose a add black mask. Or you can also go this way, which is basically the same thing, add black mask. So when we add a black mask, you'll notice that all the purple color disappeared. And basically anything black in a mask you can't see, and anything white you can see. So we can use that to be able to paint some of these things away or bring it back. So for example, let's go ahead and again, make sure you're in a brush. Here we are with this type of brush. And right now we're in white, so we can go in and start bringing in that color if we want to. So we can paint that in. Again, if you want to, you can reduce the opacity so you can actually kind of fade some of it in. So again, you can kind of paint, and the more strokes you have, the more you'll be able to see it. So this is where it becomes painterly. You can always press the letter X. You'll notice that it flips to black. So I'm going to go ahead and increase my stroke, and then I can paint black in if you want to. Again, this is just an example of what Substance can do. And the nice thing is that you can actually choose, of course, gray. You can do the same thing, press X, and it'll flip to the other side as well. So it kind of gives you a lot of really nice options. So if you're in a mood, you can go ahead and start painting. But what's really cool about Substance and why everybody loves it, it's not because of the painting aspect of it, but because of its generators. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that mask and click on an add generator. And a little generator icon pops up. The generator right now is empty. So we click on generator and we have a couple of options. One of them is called dirt. So I'm going to choose dirt. And what it does is that it puts this black and white generator on it so that you can see that it almost looks a little bit, well, dirty. So you can see that because of the metallic of my red versus my faded purple, we're getting some interesting effects. So using this, when you have your dirt generator selected, we can decrease the dirt value or increase it. It's really up to you. You can do the dirt contrast, where you can make it actually kind of faded, or you can make it actually pretty dramatic and increasing the contrast. You can do the grunge amount. Do you want them a little bit more grungier? Maybe I'll just increase the contrast and then make it grungier. You can change the scale so you can make it really chunky. So it gives you this really cool effect. Now you're not limited to just this. You can always right click and add a paint layer. So for example, if I wanted to be like, okay, here's some grunge, but I really want to paint right along here, I'm just going to go ahead and paint that in. So you're not limited to just the grunge. You can actually bring it in or paint it out. So for example, I can go ahead and let's fade it out a little bit. I can grab one of these brushes and maybe what I want, maybe using brackets, just like Photoshop, increase the bracket. You can kind of paint some of it away. Maybe you think it's too strong. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to reduce my opacity, maybe get something a little grungier and just kind of, you know, paint some of those away. So you're not limited to just the generator. You can always paint it yourself. So it's pretty cool. I press X just so I can kind of bring that back. Press X again to flip the colors. So it's fun. Maybe I want to go back to black and just kind of paint that away. There's a lot of things you can do. It's really neat. It's really powerful and fun. But you're not limited to just that. Let's say, for example, I wanted to add a little bit more metallic to it, but I want it all on top of this. So what I can do is create a folder. And this folder, I can drag the objects into the folder. And again, make sure that the layers make sense. So I'm going to drag this purple one back to the top. So it's being affected by this folder. So I'm going to delete this layer. So just press delete on your keyboard. And let's take a look at some other things that we have. Over here at the bottom, we have something called materials. And under materials, we have a few options. And one of them is called rust. So I'm going to grab rust and bring it above. So with rust, I can actually right click on this, again, create a black mask, right click on it again, click on add generator, and then add a generator. And let's look at curvature. So it's a little hard to see, but basically the curvature map is baked based on what's going on with the edges. So I can go ahead and make sure that I have my curvature map selected, and I can use this to make it, the contrast can be stronger. So it's really tough, rough around the edges. I can decrease the global balance or increase it so it spreads a little bit more. So it affects basically everything above that. So I'm going to add another fill layer just because I'm having so much fun. And I'm going to hide these little guys. And I'm actually going to let's grab this plastic one. Again, I'm just kind of having fun. Again, you can kind of play around with it. You have height range. There's a couple of things you can make it more metal if you want to. Again, I would recommend that you just kind of explore this and just have some fun with this object. I'm going to grab this rust and put it over here because basically it's all together in a folder. Now, what if I wanted to see this new color below it? This is going to get really crazy really fast. All right, so the folder, also apply a mask to it. Right click on it, add a black mask. We can also add another generator. And let's go ahead and do, and if you hover, you'll be able to see some cool stuff, maybe this one. And you can see that by using the folder, we can actually create a mask over the folder, which impacts everything. So I'm going to increase this, spread the smoothness out a little bit, or decrease it. Just have a little bit of fun there. So I'm getting this Harley Quinn looking texture, but it's kind of fun to play around with. So basically what we've done is played around with layers. We also have played with fill layers, created some materials, and also did a lot of masking with generators. The next thing I wanted to show you is smart materials. So by using these folders, we've basically created our own smart material. We have a bunch of folders and they all being impacted by some sort of generator. Over here to the bottom, we also have smart materials, and these guys are actually folders too. So if I grab, let's say, this bronze one and bring it to the top, you'll notice that it's got a set of folders. And if I open it up, you can actually break these down to see how did they make it. If I click on the mask, you can see that they're using some sort of rust generator. If I click on this green thing, it'll show you how they did it. And then you can also see the mask editor. So it's really powerful what these guys can do. So using this bronze corroded, I can right click on it, use a mask, again, You can use a generator. And there's so many options that you can choose, but let's do metal edges. And let's go ahead and increase the wear. Increase the wear contrast. You can see the difference here, just a little soft, maybe amount of grunge. So now it's looking like my Harley Quinn ball is now covered in some sort of corroded bronze, which is interesting and gives this sphere a lot of personality. All right, now that we've had some fun with this, in the next tutorial, we are going to have a little bit more control of this and try to make specific selections. For example, how do you select UVs in here? How do you select faces? Things of that nature, so that you have complete control on how to texture with Substance. So hopefully you found this interesting. At least I hope you found it fun. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a message below. Substance is very powerful. We've just scratched the surface. In the next video tutorial, we'll go ahead and continue working on Substance. So thank you so much for watching. I know there's a plethora of videos out there, so I'm really grateful that you're here with me, listening and watching. If you guys have any questions, again, don't forget to go ahead and leave a comment below. Also, take a look at academicphoenixplus.com for free videos, free ebooks, and free downloads. Like, for example, the shader ball. You can go ahead and download it and follow along. And I would love for you guys to tag me in social media. So if you want to mess around with Substance with the shader ball and tag me on Instagram or Twitter or anything, I would love it. So that would be amazing. Don't forget to like and share. And I look forward to the next tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.